Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wealth Preservation Podcast. I'm Mark Seither.
And I'm Josh Saunders. Mark and I love learning about business, entrepreneurship, and how people started, grew, and preserved what they have worked so hard for. We have all made some cringeworthy mistakes in life and in business, and we want to help entrepreneurs and business owners avoid those pitfalls.
But while there's no blueprint for definitive success or failure, we can rely on the stories of other entrepreneurs for the lessons on how they launched and scaled up their business.
Some of the questions we love answered on each episode are, what mistakes have you made? What would you do differently in life and business? And what would you outsource first?
So come join us as we hear from entrepreneurs around the globe on topics such as their origin story, how they innovated in their industry, and the advice they feel aspiring entrepreneurs need to hear today.
We also like to have a little fun, so we hope you enjoy this episode and it inspires and encourages you. All right, everybody, we are excited again here to do episode 2 with Mac Bartine of SmartRIA. Mac, how are you doing today?
Doing great.
Awesome. As always, here with my sidekick, Mark, and we're going to be talking about compliance and the SEC and all kinds of great topics and running a business. So we're excited to dive into this.
And then on top of that, so one thing I'm also very much so looking forward to is Mac has been part of many startups, and so he's going to bring his insight as far as managing teams and putting together, making sure you're not building a toxic work environment. Not everyone tries to, and sometimes you just end up with like, wow, this is totally assembled wrong. And so we're going to get some nuggets of advice from Mac on that. So
sounds good.
Perfect. Well, real quick, for those who maybe haven't listened to the first episode, can you give everyone just a quick description of SmartRIA, where you're located, and when you guys were founded?
So SmartRIA is a cloud-based software platform that manages compliance for the wealth management industry. We're based in Knoxville, Tennessee, but we have employees all over the country, and that's pretty much it.
Perfect. And real quick, before we dive into the management component of it, and I would encourage anyone to go listen to our first episode, and get a little bit more on Mac's background. But what was that first year like of, just kind of that nerve-wracking, we launched, think we have a good idea, but ultimately the market will tell us if we have a good idea or not.
It's a lot of work to start any company, and SmartRIA was no exception. My average work week the first couple years actually that we were in business was probably 70 hours on the low side and 100 hours or more on the high side, and did that for a couple years. And so it's just in general, it's a whole lot of work at first.
So if anyone is someone who, if any of our listeners are people who really look forward to that mandated 20-minute break you get every 2 hours, entrepreneurship might not be the gig for you.
There's a lot of research out there that says that actually is better for you, and you're more productive if you're good about taking those breaks in a meaningful way where you're actually taking those breaks. But when there's work to do, it's really, really hard to step away, especially when we have some pretty big goals as a company, and there was a lot that had to happen for us to have a reasonable chance of achieving any of them. So,
and did you guys go through any of that in the first year, where it was just like, you always want to charge hard, charge forward, get stuff done, but did you guys have any of those moments where you're like, is this just not a thing? Like, do I need to go find a W-2 job somewhere?
I think probably most entrepreneurs have moments where they're like, anybody want these keys? Here they are. But you've just got to power through those moments. And there's a lot to be said for don't fall for the sunk cost fallacy. where you're just staying on the line purely because you've been on that line for some period of time, and you feel like I've put all of this time and energy in, and I've got to keep going. You don't want to do it for that reason, especially if you're figuring out that it may not be the right problem to try to solve, or the right way to solve it, all that kind of good stuff. But you've got to be ready for the work.
That is a tough mental shift. I've seen some people fall into that trap, right? Like, the justification for moving forward is because of everything I've sunk into this, and it's like, well, it has to pay off. It's like, you know how the free market works? It doesn't have to pay off.
Yeah.
Screw the free market. Life.
Yeah, exactly. Life.
Yeah.
Life is not kind sometimes. Gotta look out for.
So you launched SmartRIA, and you have the technology platform. And what was your first big pivot, or the first time you're like, hey, we thought this part was going to be a great idea, and that wasn't what we thought it was, and we had to kind of adjust a little bit. Was there one of those in that first year where you're like, oh, or was it a whole bunch of small pivots, or were you just like, man, we crushed this thing right out of the box?
The first pivot that we made, I don't know that I would call it much of a pivot, but it was some major changes. And basically, we had a platform that solved lots of different types of problems, all operationally oriented, but not necessarily all compliance oriented.
Okay.
And we made the choice of cutting out to about 40% of the platform and saying, okay, this is what's really focused on compliance, and this is what we're keeping and going to grow from. It also, at the time of SmartRIA getting started, being a disruptor in your industry was still kind of a buzzword for startups. You want to disrupt the industry, and I knew pretty well at the beginning that we didn't want to disrupt the traditional industry that we're in, which is compliance consultants and law firms that are offering services to the companies in the industry. We wanted to support and engage that industry. So at about the time that we cut out 40% of the software, we also added in a role that was specifically for those professionals so they could work with their clientele through our platform.
Yeah, but that's crazy though, right? For our listeners, you cut out 40% of your original business plan, right? And we're like, hey, we did all this work on this one section. By the way, we're going to chunk that. We're going to throw that in the waste heap of the virtual trash bin, right? So how did that decision go down? And for you and the other co-founders and your kind of employees, were they like, Mac, we think you're crazy. This is was it, or did the data just tell you that had to be done?
There was a fair amount of discussion, and especially for my partners, since the company was his idea originally, and he spent his own money to build out this platform for his firm before he spun it out as a business. So that was a conversation that we had to have, and what we wound up doing was leaving the parts that he had built specifically for his company in the software for his company, and maybe one or two other companies that were using those portions of the software.
Yeah.
And for everyone else, it was not available. And then eventually we just turned all of that off. But we gave him some time to work out something else.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, well, because I'm sure, even internally, was there any besides the partners, were there any team members that you built around that were just like, hey, don't do this, and it was like, hey, it's kind of
So early on, it was me and the technical team. There was no one in customer support besides me. There was no one in sales besides me. And so it
Hello,
was
sales,
pretty
this is
much,
Mac. Hello, customer support, this is Mac.
yeah. So, the software developers, the more platform that you're supporting as a software developer, the more involved your job is and the less time you have to develop something new, right? And so the developers were all 100% on my side, that they're like, yeah, we're having to maintain this, but if we weren't having to maintain that, we could be doing these other things that we know we want to do, and it would be more on the compliance side of things, so we're making our product stronger. And so we were all pretty much in lockstep agreement on that.
Yeah.
Which because that's kind of the other side. So you cut about 40% out, right? And then you were able to hyper focus on one specific thing. From the business development side, right, and working with the developers, I know there's staying away from that sunken cost fallacy, right? When you guys would start doing something new or start improving something, what is this is something a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, is when something's not working, how long did you and the developers talk about it and try and fix it before saying, hey, we got to scrap it?
I don't think, other than that original cut, that we have turned off any part of the software since then, or stopped supporting any part of the software since then. So pretty much 99% sure that since that major cut at the beginning, everything that we said, this is what we need, we're still doing it. And we're thankfully we haven't made any decisions that were like, oh crap, that was a bad choice. We should not have put all the time and effort into that. We thankfully have not had that happen.
Yeah.
You're like, we thought everyone was going to want compliance specific emojis. Spent all that time developing compliance emojis.
Yeah. We've had some interesting discussions about things that we could do that kind of fit into that realm. So things like gamifying compliance, where you're randomly rewarding people for getting compliance done, and following game theory in terms of what motivates and gets people addicted to doing things in games, using game theory to make people addicted to compliance. And the general consensus was, that ain't going to work.
Zero dopamine is released when compliance is involved.
Yes.
Yeah. Mine is like the anti-dopamine. It's the opposite of So in that first year, was there ever a time when you're like, yep, I think this is gonna work, or no, wow, it's kind of touch and go here for right now, or is it this might be a flop?
So I'm a pretty optimistic guy, and I think you have to be a fairly optimistic guy to be an entrepreneur. So I very rarely had truly dark moments where I was like, oh God, I'm in over my head here. This is not going to work. But there were times where I was like, is it worth it? Ultimately, I always decided that it was, and I kept going. But early on, when you're trying to build a business, and like I said in the last conversation we had, trying to make sure that you have the resources that you need to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. There are times where you're like, okay, do I put my foot on the gas? Do I not put my foot on the gas? If I put my foot on the gas, we're going to run out of money in X months. If I don't put my foot on the gas, then we can't get this customer. There are all kinds of decisions that you have to make every single day early on before you've kind of established the company. And it's tough. You never know if you're making the right decision or not.
Yeah. And sometimes you're trying to decide, do I put my foot on the gas to put it on the brake, and then you accidentally throw it in reverse and blow your transmission. So like you can easily mess things up in those quick decision moments. Yeah. So on the flip side, did you was there a particular time where all of a sudden like you guys just had that relief and you're like, okay, we are going from like startup concept idea to like, it was always a real business, but then like confidently saying like, this is a functioning operating business that if I step away for a week and come back in, it's still operating.
I think the time that was the biggest, really think this is going to work moment for us early on was, as I mentioned, we created a role that was for compliance professionals. And I saw a tweet by Michael Kitces, and if you're not in our industry, you probably won't know who Michael Kitces is, but he's really well-known personality and professional in our industry, a real thought leader. So I saw something that he said on Twitter regarding compliance. I don't remember what it was, but I reached out and said, "Hey, Michael," I said, I saw what you said. We're actually solving that problem. And that one tweet led to us landing XY Planning Network, which was at that point in time, I think 400 RIAs were members. And so it was our first really big customer, and it was great validation, and I still have a very warm place in my heart for Alan Moore and Michael Kitces, because they definitely put their faith in us.
Yeah, which I mean, maybe this is too extreme of an example, but getting the endorsement or the getting the the interaction that you had with Michael Kitces, for any of our listeners not in the financial services industry, that it'd be like if Shaq were to tell you, like, you know what, you can play basketball, you're pretty good. Yeah, there you go. You're like, oh my gosh.
Shaq is never going to say that to me personally. Guarantee it. But yeah, it's similar. I mean, he's a real leader of the industry.
Yeah, no, he absolutely is. Well, yeah. So I mean, that kind of got you guys to the point to where you're like, okay, this is a functioning business. That we're moving in the right direction. Now you're looking at, or maybe not yet, but you're probably at that point looking at like, okay, now we can expand, right? Now we can kind of add team members. What was kind of the first thing you looked at from like your previous startups, the one you had, SmartRIA, as like, okay, let's start building out the team. What do you outsource first?
So the sooner the better. But that was around the time that it was actually right before then that we hired our first full-time employee, and it was a salesperson who was working with me to help sell the software. We had a half dozen part-time software developers, including Adrian Carr, who is our full-time CTO today. He actually was with SmartRIA on a part-time basis before I started as the CEO. So we had a fairly well-established software development team, and they could help me a little bit on the customer support side of things, but really needed someone who was just beating the bushes and working to get our name out there and to start to get more customers. And so sales was the first.
Yeah. Which, so you guys, added that component to it. Sometimes growing too fast can be as hard as sometimes worse than not growing at all. So did you guys experience like hey, we are experiencing rapid growth. now we have to basically full throttle on the customer support side, on the branding side. I mean, what problems kind of came from a result of being too good?
Well, I don't think I will ever say that we were too good. Um, there are always problems, that have to be solved. But it really is a balancing act, because if you're not growing as a software startup, no one is going to invest in you. And unless you personally have the money, or someone who personally has the money and they're going to give it to you, you either have to have a solution that's immediately profitable and able to bring people on from that revenue, or you have to bring in outside capital. And if you're not growing at a reasonable rate, you can forget about outside capital. Nobody's going to invest. So it's a real balancing act. You don't want to overcommit yourself. Certainly, you also don't want to put your foot on brakes, because you're growing to keep the company viable for rapid growth. And for better or for worse, the startup ecosystem often is take some investment capital, use that investment capital to grow, get pretty close to break even, or maybe a little bit past break even, take some investment capital, spend more money, use it to grow, get pretty close to break even, take some more capital, and it's a cycle, and eventually you say, okay, I've taken enough capital. But until you're really where you want to be as a company, that's always going to be a consideration. When do we need to talk to investors again and take on some more capital? And again, without growth, nobody's going to be interested. So even though it's scary sometimes to land big new customers and bring them on, you have to grow.
Yeah. And so, I guess kind of going to that piece of it too, because growing is, what would you say most entrepreneurs miss about growing a team, right? Or, whether it's a certain, whether it's customer service or, HR. Obviously, sales was the first thing you did, right? First thing you hired on. What's kind of that, from your experience, the thing that's like, hey, this is the sleeper backbone of the company.
Yeah. So everyone was a contract employee for the first almost 2 years that we were in business. We officially started hiring full-time employees as W-2 employees in 2018, and the first 3 positions that we hired full-time were a software developer, customer support, and marketing, and sales. So basically, here's somebody that does this, here's somebody that does this, here's somebody that does this. That's our stool for now. We can rest on that and build from there.
Yeah. And because kind of going from the, because you're the, you're the guy, right? You're the owner. You're the, you're the one steering the ship. Sometimes, was there any, I guess like department management with a small group? It's a lot easier. But as you guys have grown, has there been some, hey, these are the things that we gotta either stay away from, toxic culture wise, or caring for employees versus, there's that balance between we got to take care of our clients, not at the detriment of our employees, right?
Yeah. So, like I said in our last conversation, I really care about people, and the people who we are closest to as a business are our team members, right? Those are the people who we see every single day, and we interact with them, and we're working together to achieve something. And you have to have an atmosphere of professionalism where you're treating people with respect, and you expect them to treat each other with respect and collaboration. It's really easy for people to get in silos, and the software side is saying, okay, they told us to do this, we're doing this, and the customer support people are saying, okay, this is what I have, this is, those people have to interact, and sales has to interact with them, and there need to be leaders at all of those levels. But you also do have to, well, you don't have to. There are certainly lots of companies that don't really go out of their way to make a culture that's exciting for the employees. But it was something that was important to me, to make a culture that is exciting for the employees. So everybody who works at SmartRIA has options in the company. So they have ownership in the company that they're helping to build. We have good insurance for everyone. We have paid maternity and paternity leave for everyone. And we're a small company, but when we had an employee who was pregnant, Adrian Carr, our CTO, and I said, okay, we have someone on your team, Adrian, who's pregnant, and right now we don't have a benefit for that. What are we going to do? And we look back to our history and to our values, and it's a really easy decision to make. You add that benefit to your team because you take care of your team. So it's an iterative process, and you kind of know what you need to know, or to add, that is, when the time comes.
Yeah.
Which, that's something that I wish more people realize just about the small business, type community. Small businesses and the people who run, the people who found small businesses, they typically have a very, very deep interest in their employees. And I think sometimes the corporate giant company, the bigger a company gets, the harder it is for them to connect with their employees, right? And I think sometimes people just have that mentality with business across the board, right? It's like, no, you don't have, like, a small business. I mean, we've talked to a lot of business owners where it's like, I will bend over backwards for my employees. They are the face of my company. They're, I want desperately to take care of them.
Yes.
Which, because the other thing too is, you mentioned you have, you're based in Knoxville, but you have people all over, in different states, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how have you guys navigated creating that team mentality, that, well-connected team from a virtual work environment?
So up to the pandemic, everyone was in Knoxville, Tennessee. We had one intern who was in Memphis, who wound up staying on part-time. But besides her, we were all in Knoxville pre-pandemic. As with a lot of companies, with the beginning of the pandemic, when nobody really knew what was happening, but we knew it was serious. We said, okay, we're a virtual company to a large extent right now. We see a lot of benefit in face-to-face interactions, but let's protect ourselves and our fellow team members, and we're going to go virtual. So that's really when we started to have the thought of, okay, how do we translate what we had as an in-person company into a virtual company? So we had a party. We had a get together as a company on the last Thursday of the month when we were all in person. So everybody would come in. We would order pizza or something like that, and we would watch a movie or go play disc golf or whatever the case may be. We were doing something as a team, and there would be some work discussions maybe, but for the most part, it was just social time. So when the pandemic hit and we started being virtual, all located in Knoxville, and then slowly started to hire outside of Knoxville, we said, okay, let's keep doing that, but got to be virtual. So we found games that we could play online through Zoom, and talked about other ways that we could make that something that was still engaging. And I think it's pretty hard to really be a team when everyone is virtual, when you so rarely see your coworkers. You have to make an effort to pull people together. And it is an effort, because it's not as natural as just being in front of someone, being together in a room.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, quick pause here to let you know you can find more episodes at wealthpreservationpodcast.com.
Or if you want videos, you can go to YouTube, and we're also there.
Subscribe and you'll be updated on our most recent guests and any other news we have coming out.
Thanks for listening. As far as the virtual thing has gone, for Mark and I, we happened to go virtual in 2019 just because of circumstances, and we were kind of pre-pandemic. But how I always hear that the only problem with some part of the virtual thing is there seems to be a little bit of a loss of creativity when everybody can kind of sit around in that conference room and throw around ideas. Have you seen that, or have you been able to overcome that, or is that a thing, or you just haven't really experienced it?
It is a thing. I would say that the give and take of in-person versus virtual, in person, you can walk up to someone's office and say, hey, Mac, I was thinking about this. What do you think? And I can say, yeah, it's really interesting. Let's whiteboard it together.
Sure.
And so, you can have easy, spontaneous collaborations. You don't have to worry about your internet connection or anything like that. Everybody's just like, we're good. And obviously that's harder in a virtual world. But on the other hand, in a virtual world, nobody is walking into your study or your home office or your basement or your bedroom or wherever it is you're working from and saying, hey, Mark, I was thinking about this. If somebody did that, you'd be like, what the hell are you doing in my house? So there are less interruptions, and you can get more done. But then, on the negative side, all of that spontaneous collaboration that happens when people are together is harder to achieve.
Right.
Interestingly enough, there's a startup based in Knoxville that solves that problem. It's a company called Lunch Pool.
Oh.
So they are working mostly with larger companies, but basically everybody has a virtual office. There's like a virtual central area where people can hang out, and everyone knows they're available for collaboration and conversation, and they can have their door open or shut, et cetera, et cetera. So it's interesting.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Does it involve Oculus Rift and the metaverse?
It does not. That would be cool, but no.
I have been asked multiple times about the metaverse as of recently. So yes, it's kind of an interesting topic. It's a thing. It's coming.
Josh, your boys want an Oculus Rift.
My boys want anything that they like.
Electronic.
Yeah, electronic. Yeah. Yeah. As long as they can play soccer around it, they're excited. Yeah. So you kind of, the collaboration part of it, you kind of had to, shift a little bit. But what has been the big benefit about being out, about being dispersed now? Is it that people have more freedom? Is it that they're, you feel like they're a little more productive, or, what has been the big win there?
Or you have it also opens up your guys' hiring pool too, because now you're not, you're kind of opened up to anywhere.
All of the above, really.
Sure.
So, our productivity went up.
Yeah.
A lot of people a lot of companies were worried about productivity will go down because we're not there to to surveil everyone and tell them to get to work. But it turns out for a lot of companies, productivity went up, and we were one of those companies. And you're not spending gas money to go in and out to the office. You're not spending 15 minutes or half an hour or an hour to commute to your office. So people had more time, they were more relaxed, etc. Lots of benefits there. And then also, we as news started to come out about Silicon Valley was realizing that here they were virtual and the sky hadn't fallen, and so maybe they could hire from someone or some other place. We were like, oh yeah, it's true. Let's try it. And so we have almost half of our staff now is outside of Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I guess also kind of getting back to but part of what makes productivity go up, right, is having a good team and everything. Was there anything that maybe with SmartRIA versus some of the previous startups that you've been a part of that you were like, hey, this is what drives away good talent, right? Was there anything that you were like, I want to make sure that this is not part of SmartRIA because this particular thing, whatever that is, just drives away good talent. I don't care how much it costs. It's never going to replace the talent leaving the door.
I didn't really look at it from a perspective of this is going to drive away good talent. I thought more along the lines of what is going to attract and keep good talent.
Yeah.
And so that led to me looking for companies that do payroll and benefits so that I didn't have to do it. And so it would get done right. And so, we would have economy of scale on the benefit side of things. And so first we tried a company called, I don't remember the name of that company, but
not that
then
good.
we went to JustWorks. And so JustWorks, they handle all of our payroll taxes. They have 100,000 or 200,000 employees across the country. And so, you become an employee of JustWorks on their books, but you're still doing all the hiring, firing. It's your company, you're running it. It's just there's economy of scale there, so they can give you good benefit plan like you're in a large company. And so just looking for things like that, what can we do to be more like the companies that are bigger and provide the type of experience that people want to have without it breaking the bank. And it does cost a little bit of money to use those services, but it really is a little bit of money. And people have more of a big company experience, even though you're smaller. Right. So, and then, really just keeping your eyes open and watching what's happening and seeing where things are not what you want them to be, and or where someone is struggling, and just thinking about, how can we solve that? How can we help that person and other people who have that same problem and solve it?
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you use a business coach, or do you have kind of like a mentor currently that you're using, or have you had one in the past that kind of helped get you through some some struggles or helped you grow?
I've had lots of mentors, and it's certainly, everybody says get a mentor, and my response would be get a lot of mentors, because mentors will get tired of you if they're the only one you're going to. There's you can't know it all.
Right.
You just can't. There's no way you ever will. And there's always somebody who's been there, done that. And there's always somebody who's been there, done that well. And
Right.
then you add on to that, there's always someone like that who's willing to help. And you just have to find them. But probably the best mentors that I've had as a CEO for SmartRIA have been my board members. They're typically people who have put money into the company.
Yeah.
They come from different walks of business, but they all have really strong capabilities in different areas of business, and learn a lot from my fellow board members.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Lots of mentors, people. There we go. Get lots of mentors.
Yeah,
it helps.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna have to go stack up on mentors now, Josh.
Yeah. Me too.
My wife would concur.
So, Mac, you kind of talked about outsourcing HR, but what was the was that really the first thing you outsourced, and you're like, yes, we got to get HR people in here to make this work, or was it accounting, or did you bring in someone? What was kind of your first weakness when you're like, hey, I gotta fix this?
Well, first was the books. The small business owners, unless they have a background in accounting, and maybe even then, do not need to be doing their own books. It's stupid. Because doing your own books is hard. It's time consuming. You could definitely get it wrong. And so it's cheap. It's comparatively inexpensive to hire a part-time bookkeeper to manage your QuickBooks. So that was actually the first thing that we outsourced. And the next was having a professional employer organization, PEO. And we tried one, we didn't like it. We went to JustWorks, and they've been great.
Yeah.
And there are little things out there. There always, you can spend a lot of money on benefits, and there's only so much additive value to adding something else once you already have a good benefit stack. But
sure.
Right now, for example, we have inflation, and one of our employees said, I really like, you need a budget. They have this thing where you can offer it as a benefit to your team members. Maybe other people, since average is like $400 a month, that people are spending more today than they were before the inflation started on the exact same things. So people do need a budget. People need to be able to manage their money, and so like, okay, well, that's an interesting idea. It's appropriate to this moment in time. Maybe we'll do that. And those kind of things, they happen all the time. You just look at them and say, are people really going to care? Is it going to be meaningful and help?
Yeah.
Josh, I almost feel like we need to rephrase that question or stop asking it, because I don't think anyone's ever not said the books. It's always the first thing. Like I didn't realize that simple addition and subtraction could become so confusing.
Pretty much we're 30 for 30 when it comes to, that was the first thing that was outsourced when it comes to that question. I think even our one accounting firm was like, yeah, we outsourced the bookkeeping of the business side of it.
I don't have time for that.
Yeah. So
I think it's because everybody who's an entrepreneur probably makes the mistake of thinking, that's what QuickBooks is for. I can do that.
Yeah.
And then, the first time they do their taxes, their accountant is like, what the hell did you do? You're like, oh,
right.
That was wrong. Okay. Yeah. So once you learn that lesson, it's like, okay, start a business, outsource your.
Yeah. I love
it. Or they have the hey, why did you do this? And you're just looking at it, you're like, I don't think I've ever laid eyes on this ever. Like,
Yeah.
I know that that's my work and it shows that I logged in and did that, but I don't think that was me. I have no idea. Like,
I don't remember doing that. Yeah, or
keep it
why I
late at
did
night, no idea. Yeah,
Yep.
whiskey and the books do not mix.
that. Yeah.
Well, perfect. And then, also one thing that, because as you guys have grown, right? That's kind of there's the struggle, with growing of like, hey, now we're growing and I need to start passing like decision making down the line, right? So, how's it your experience been with like, hey, I'm the owner, the CFO, like, this is my baby, and here's how I'm going to kind of decentralize and start giving away power to other people to make decisions for me.
Yeah, so it happens over time, and ultimately, one of my co-executives in SmartRIA is as they say in old salt in startups. He was in startups early in the '90s and has a lot of experience, and he has this thing that he says where people are soldiers, meaning you tell them what to do and they do it, or they are guerrillas. So it's kind of a fighting analogy, I guess. But guerrillas look at the problem and they say, okay, I'm going to go around the hill and come up the back instead of going straight up it. They look for the best path to get the job done, and they know how to do that. And so when you're starting out, you're looking for anybody, right, who's willing to work for you and who you can afford and all of that kind of stuff. And it's the luck of the draw whether they are a guerrilla or a soldier. If they're a soldier, you always have to tell them what to do. If they're a guerrilla, hopefully they're a smart guerrilla. So they're doing the right things without you telling them what to do.
Right.
But as you grow and you start to figure out who are the people that that really are intuitive and they take initiative and who I can count on to make decisions without me having to tell them what to do, they kind of rise up through the organization and you start delegating to them. And that's basically what's happened at SmartRIA. From Adrian Carr, who I've mentioned before, being the first full-time executive besides myself, and then John Morris, the old salt, becoming our chief operating officer. We hired an outside CFO for managing all things financial, and he's about half time with us. So that wasn't so much a rising up through the team, but just recently promoted Amy Easterly to the chief experience officer. So she's in charge of all things customer experience related. Awesome. So you recognize who you can delegate to because you don't have to tell them specifically what to do. The interesting thing for us right now is I'm a pretty good salesperson. I'm confident in my company and what we do, and I know how to talk to larger customers and say this is what we're doing. This is how I think we can help you. But I'm not a sales manager. So creating a culture of sales is hard for us without a sales manager. So
Sure.
You have this situation where we're a really strong product company. We don't have someone who's really driving that culture of sales growth, and it's time for Mac to stop being that person so he can do something else, and someone who that's all they do can come in and really start to do that well. So that's the other side of it is where your weaknesses are, and when you have the budget, you have to decide, do I hire another soldier or do I hire another leader? If it's another soldier, I can do it right now. If it's another leader, I have to wait 6 months.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Josh, I feel like we've covered so much. Like we've covered, hiring leaders and soldiers, keeping good, attracting good talent, working virtually, get many mentors, many mentors. That's
Yes.
in the back of my mind. Like Mark, get many. uh, uh, so real quick before we wrap up here, what do you see, in the next 5 years, because we are kind of going through a big shift just with, post-COVID work environment and everything. Some people are saying, hey, things are going to go back to the way things were. This is here to stay. From your perspective, what do you think is absolutely here to stay from just a business culture perspective, and what you would like to see, maybe transition either a little differently or go back to the way it was?
I think virtual teams are here to stay.
Yeah.
People have experienced it. They've experienced rolling out of bed and wearing a button down with shorts. Nobody can see your shorts on Zoom unless you stand up. There were some examples of that.
Don't stand up, Mark. Don't stand up.
But people have experienced the freedom of getting to work from home, and companies have seen that there's still value in that, and sometimes there's even more value in that. And there are companies that want people to come back into the office, and they're forcing their employees to come back into the office. But those people have choices. Especially in today's job market, where it's really hard to find good people and attract them and make them want to work with you. And the companies, often larger, more established companies that are saying, nah, we spent all this money on this real estate, you have to come back into the office. People have a choice. And so I think as long as people have a choice, they're going to be using that choice. And I think it's inevitable that the virtual work environment is here to stay. Maybe hybrid environments will become more popular.
Yeah.
So can we have you on record? What I'm hearing is you're calling out Elon Musk. That's what Mac Bartine is doing on this podcast. Like
that's
Elon
what I
Musk,
heard. Yeah.
Yeah. That's essentially.
Elon, I'm calling you out. You're in trouble.
Done. If anyone wants to leave Tesla and come work at SmartRIA, let us know. We'll get you in touch with Mac. No problem.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So kind of, before we kind of wrap up, where do you see the wealth management, since, you do run a business that, is in the wealth management industry, kind of where do you see the wealth management business going? And are there any big changes or shifts you see kind of happening over the next couple of years?
When we were first getting started, everybody was freaking out about, betterment and, we're going to automate wealth management and that has turned out to be not true.
Yeah.
But it's happening a little bit. I suppose there will be people who are going to go that route. But
sure,
people want the confidence of being able to speak with professionals who say, "Yeah, you're good," or "No, you really need to change this." Let's talk about what your goals are, all that kind of stuff. And technology is not a replacement for that, or it's not a replacement that's going to satisfy everyone, certainly. And then, of course, the transition of the current generation to the next generation of trillions of dollars of wealth. And it's going to not only go from grandpa to dad, it's going to go from the current principal of firm ABC to the young woman or man who's come in and is now running that company or bought it with some outside capital or whatever the case may be. There's going to be a lot of transition of wealth, both personally and in our environment, and that's going to it's gonna play a big role in everyone's experience more and more as we go.
Yeah. Well, I was looking for the
Lots of
answer
them.
telepathic compliance approval. That's
Yeah.
if you could work on telepathic compliance approval, I will pay many dollars for that.
Yes.
Tell you what, I'm
We
gonna
give that
roll
business idea
out-
for free.
Here's my commitment. When we roll out gamification of compliance, telepathy is going to be included.
Yes.
Boom.
Yes.
If you could call it the Scyther Sonder feature, so that we just live forever in your system, that'd be great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Well, we'll jump into the speed round real quick. Again, thank you so much for being on. All right, speed round. So, first question of the speed round. What books do you recommend for current or aspiring entrepreneurs?
Just read a really good book called Think Like a Rocket Scientist. So Think Like a Rocket Scientist is, I enjoyed it a lot. Really good, practical, and well-written. Yeah. And it comes with the workbook. I love that.
Yeah.
I will put that on the list. It's probably a little easier for you having a dad who was a physicist, but
Yeah.
you're cheating a little bit.
So where do you go for non-business related, inspiration, or, kind of be a better leader, and kind of where do you go towards that?
I really go to my mentors, like we were talking about before, and also, I go to my original. I go to my original loves of creative activities, music and art. They're really good for helping you to think outside of the box, and so I will go there. And also, just turning off all your devices and sitting with yourself and letting your problems stew, and that's a good thing as well.
Love it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
If I ever see you playing the guitar, I'll be like, Mac's working on something big.
Yep. He's working on the
He's gonna have
zone.
his next big breakthrough.
He's working on
telepathic compliance.
There you go. There you go. It's coming.
That was the guitar riff. That's it.
That was it.
All right, and now back to non-business. So we seem to always go back to food.
We love food, Mark. We do.
People coming into Knoxville. What's like one or two local eateries, not chains, like someone local that you're like, okay, if you're gonna eat anywhere, go eat there.
If you like pizza, go to a Dopo Pizza in downtown. Fantastic. You have to make a reservation, but go to a Dopo. And I think if you like just fine cuisine, I really like the Foothills Milling Company, which is in Maryville. It's half hour outside of Knoxville.
Yep.
And there are lots and lots of good restaurants in between those, but there are a couple.
Well, I can vouch for a Dopo. You don't have to make a reservation. My wife and I found out you could just sit for a very long time waiting. That's what we ended up doing.
Yes.
Oh, Friday's busy here? Yeah, bad timing, Mark.
Yeah, and the milling company in Maryville is delicious. So yes, I love that. All right, so last one, kind of ethereal one, but if you could inherit one skill overnight, what would it be? Besides telepathic compliance, obviously.
The ability to always be right. That would be fabulous.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you see some of those Marvel movies, the ones who are cursed with wisdom are always the ones that, are tortured.
Yeah, so I'll have to tell myself when I inherit the ability to always be right, don't be a superhero.
Yes.
Well, don't be a supervillain either.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for being on. Real quick, go ahead and plug where people can go find you, follow SmartRIA.
Yep. SmartRIA.com. And we're on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And I am on all of those platforms as well, but mostly on LinkedIn.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for listening, everyone. Mac, again, thank you for being on. Someone with your experience. I mean, a lot of good nuggets of information in that, just about startup culture, growing a team. I really appreciate it.
We thank you so much, Mac. That was awesome.
With you guys.
It was great stuff.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Just so you know, none of our guests have been paid to be interviewed. We don't charge for downloads, and we have never sold ads.
And though our wives and accountants wish we would, probably, this podcast is purely for the distribution of amazing stories and information only.
However, we do need to make one quick legal jargon-filled disclaimer. The information provided here is for educational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, or financial advice. Make sure you contact a professional before you decide to do something. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a contact or drop an email to info@wealthpreservationpodcast.com, or you are welcome to reach out to any of our guests using the information provided in the episode.
Or in human speak, don't act solely on a guest that you heard on a podcast one time, because that would be dumb. Thanks.